So what do you guys think from a board gaming perspective? And I understand for many of us as board gamers, myself included, there is crossover. I mean, I love war games. I love role-playing games. I love miniature games. I love board games on there. Miniature games, card games, hex games, counter games. I've been spotted playing the Euro here and there. But how do you feel from a board gaming perspective, even if you have crossover into other systems, how do you feel about board games that are so heavy in theme that, rules mechanics aside, and we're going to assume that the mechanics are good, they're there to deliver a theme. They're there to deliver a narrative, and you really have to be in the know with the narrative on there. And I'm going to look at two examples here because I feel like it's a duality where it does hurt certain games. And I promise absolutely no spoilers. So Blackstone Fortress. This is a Warhammer 40,000 title. It's a 40K sci-fi dungeon crawler. If you know about Warhammer 40K, it's a sci-fi based miniature game. It will just suck up a lot of time of your life on there, building, painting, playing. But the narrative of 40K is so well established, so well developed, grimdark, gothic. In my mind, a really, really interesting universe to play around in. And that's the idea behind the miniature game, where you're trying to not only win and have a great war game, but really recreate something in this grimdark type universe. Blackstone Fortress is the dungeon crawler board game version of that, where you're exploring this alien fortress looking for artifacts. And I have to say, from a rules perspective, it works on so many levels. It's got some interesting mechanics. It plays light and fast. It's not trying to be overly complex. It's not trying to be something like Gloomhaven. Massive replayability, because not only is it a campaign with multiple quests, but there is enough dungeon layouts. They're semi-random, meaning it's a deck of cards that tell you how to build them. But these cards come out in different times and places, combined with different elements of enemies to fight. There's a lot of random pieces that interlock together that give it a lot of replayability. You can play it with a campaign. You can play it a one-off mission. There's a lot of expansions coming out. You're pulling in other miniatures. It's a great game, like if you just look at the mechanics. But it is so immersed in Warhammer 40K. It's there with the character classes. It's there with the monsters you're going to fight. It's there with the very narrative of the weapons and the powers in the Blackstone Fortress itself. I find that bringing it to play a casual type game, right? We're going to the gaming club. We're just going to bring a couple of titles, see who we can recruit to play. It falls flat. Because looking at it, even looking at the box, you're like, okay, this looks pretty deep. This looks pretty immersive. And you almost kind of need that inside knowledge to get the most out of it on there. This is one of the reasons why something like Zombicide Black Plague works so incredibly well. And the rules are good enough for a light dice chucker on there. But look at zombies. It's got a sci-fi theme. I don't know, there's like a wolf man abomination running around, and I've got swords, and I got sorcery, and I got archers, and we're just like, it's immediately approachable, it's immediately understandable on there. We don't have to explain anything from that perspective. And then there's a couple of games, Dark Souls, the board game, very polarizing with the rules mechanics. I admit that on there. But putting that aside for a moment, the Dark Souls IP is massive. The narrative is massive on there. If you're a Souls fan, you're just going to plug right into that game, and you understand the who, the what, the why, the bosses, everything. But it is geared enough that if you don't really know Dark Souls, okay, the miniatures are unique looking, you could jump right in. You could play it. It's not going to hold you back. So what do you think? Something like Blackstone Fortress, I love so much, and I've been really getting a lot of plays out of it on there. But in terms of casual play, it is very limited. And there are a couple of titles in my collection that assume you're a fanboy or assume you have some pre-game knowledge of what you're getting into. And the game is so heavily narrative, if you're outside of the myth, of that game, it's hard to tackle it. It's hard to approach it on there. Do you think there are other titles out there that suffer from this problem? And if one of your favorite titles has this challenge, has this issue, what are some of the ways that you think you could get around it, trying to bring it to the casual table to play?